Mr. President.
The Senator for Illinois.
Mr. President, if you want to know what's wrong with Washington, take a snapshot of this day. Take a snapshot of where we stand at this moment. In the midst of the worst health crisis in American history in 100 years, in the midst of the worst economic setback in 75 years, we have reached the point in the United States Senate where we are going to adjourn until next week, leaving in doubt whether or not 30 million unemployed Americans will continue to receive support from the federal government. How have we reached this point? Well, in anticipation of this moment, 10 weeks ago, the House of Representatives passed a rescue package which not only addressed unemployment benefits, but a score of other major concerns we have at this moment in our history, at this moment in our economy. 10 weeks ago. And since then, the burden has been on the Republican leader in the United States Senate, Senator McConnell of Kentucky, to pick up the challenge and to produce his own approach, whatever it may be, representing his caucus, the Republican caucus, on what to do with the economy and what to do with the pandemic. And we stand today preparing to leave for 3 or 4 days with nothing. Nothing. So bad, the situation is so bad that an individual Republican senator decided to come to the floor and see if he could fix it. I disagree with his approach completely, but I respect the fact that he is as frustrated as we all are, waiting on Senator McConnell to come forward. Here is the reality of what we face and the reality that Senator McConnell should face. Any solution coming out of the Senate needs to be bipartisan. Democrats and Republicans need to agree, and we did on March 26th. The vote was 96-0 for the CARES Act, 96-0. I went home to Illinois and people would come up to me and say, I can't believe you did that. I didn't think you agreed on anything in Washington, but you all agreed on one thing, the most significant economic rescue package in the history of the United States. Well, we were challenged to do it again, and we have failed miserably in the Senate. Under the current leadership with the Republican majority, they cannot produce a bill to bring to conference, or at least to a conference table between the House and the Senate. And some of the arguments that are being made I would like to address directly. Here's one that you've heard over and over again. I think it's an urban legend, and I want to say a word about it. Here's how it goes. $600 a week, $600 a week, why, at that level, individuals won't even take a job. They'll sit home on the couch and watch another round of Netflix, binging, and they won't even want to go back to work. How many times have you heard that? $600 is just too much money. Well, I can tell you $600 is the equivalent of $15 an hour, which many of us believe is at least a minimum living wage. It is certainly not a luxury salary for anyone. And if you've lost your job, that $600 federal check, together with whatever the state sends your way, has to pay for a lot of things. Rent, mortgage, car payments, utilities. Did I mention health insurance? Food, clothing for the kids? The debts you've already incurred leading into this and your credit cards, all of a sudden $600 a week tends to evaporate. And what if you had health insurance where you worked and they laid you off or fired you, said it was over, they're closing down? If you try to pick up the employer share of your health insurance, the average cost is $1,700 a month. $600 a week, $2,400 a month, and $1,700 of it is just going to keep the health insurance you had on the job. And then there's this abiding notion that people who are unemployed just aren't trying hard enough to get a job. You know, the jobs are out there and these folks are just saying, I'd rather not. Well, let's take a look at the facts, and here are the facts. For every job that is available in America today, there are 4 unemployed people. So it isn't as if it's the other way around, 4 jobs for every unemployed person. It's 4 unemployed people for each job that is available. And to the argument by some employers, well, I just can't get them to come back to work. It turns out employers are filling jobs faster now than any time since 2012. There are people prepared to go back to work. And I happen to believe that many of these people see returning to work as the right thing to do for them economically. Unemployment cannot last forever, they know that. And secondly, it may not be meeting their needs as their family requires them. And third, the job itself may be something they had invested part of their life into and want to continue. And fourth, there may be benefits in that workplace that aren't available even through the unemployment system available today. So I reject the notion, this urban legend, that $600 a week is so much that people are turning down the opportunity to go back to work. It's not an urban legend, it's an urban lie. Yale University just came out with a report from their economics department this week. I put it in the record yesterday. You can find it if you wish. And it proves the point that I just made. They looked at the statistics. This is just not a viable complaint against the unemployment system. So what Senator McConnell has led us to is this moment, where when we return next week, there will be no federal unemployment benefit. None. It will have expired. And what do we say to these millions of family members who are struggling at this moment? Try harder. Go take anything. That's what the future is for you. I don't believe that. I think we're a better nation than that. Facing the worst public health crisis that we've seen in a century, realizing what it's done to each and every one of our lives and families, understanding how devastating it must be to lose a job in the midst of this. Sometimes people for the first time aren't working, realizing how desperate these families are to keep things together. Are we really going to walk away from them? I think it's time for Senator McConnell to sit down with the Democratic leaders. There's no alternative to this. Steve Mnuchin, the wandering messenger on Capitol Hill, could do his job, and I wish him well. But it's no replacement for grown-ups to sit at the same table, to sit down and work and compromise. We did it on March 26th. We can do it again. We need to do it for these families. And I will tell you something else. When we get reports about the state of the economy, and I've heard numbers back and forth, that on an annualized basis it's contracting at 29% to 33%, that's a big amount. 1 out of 3 businesses, a third of the goods and services in this country. Think about that, going away and disappearing. We've already seen evidence of that. What do you do to put life back into an economy? Don't take my word for it. Listen to the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. He said it again yesterday. We've got to deal with this pandemic. That means more testing. The Republican proposal that's floating here and has not been offered is $26 billion more in testing. We're at $100 billion. I think we need at least $100 billion. Why do we need it? So it's generally available, easily available to every person and family in America, that it's affordable, and I hope that means free, and most importantly, that it's timely. I ask people, I said, well, I took a test. Well, how long did it take to get the results on your COVID-19 test? Oh, 6 days, 7 days. That is not a timely test that you can use to make a plan. It's a piece of medical data. It's a piece of history. If we are going to hope to open this economy in a responsible way, to get to contact tracing that really works, if we hope to open our schools so they're safe for the kids and the teachers and the administrators and everyone else, we need testing available, and we need a system of testing that is timely. We have failed in addressing this pandemic. Why do I say that? It sounds like an outrageous political statement. Because the United States has 5% of the population in the world and 25% of the COVID infections. 25% of the COVID infections in the world are in this country. 5% of the population. Other countries have handled this better. We know it. We should learn from them. And this president has got to get away from the medical quackery which he spreads around on his Twitter account and on his speeches. He's got to stop looking at these medical gurus which he discovers in some weird corner of the internet and peddling their goods to the rest of America. He's got to show some guts and wear a mask more often so people understand that even Trump Republicans need to take into consideration what they're doing to the people around them. That, to me, is the only way to get out of this mess and do it quickly. Otherwise, we're going to face this more. We should have done better. By this time, we should have had an alternative to what the House did 10 weeks ago. We do not. By next week, we've got to do it. I'll just say flat out, there is no point in considering going home at the end of next week unless we have solved this problem. And there's no excuse. Mr. President, I yield the floor.